A gray bus belonging to the Department of Corrections pulled up in front of the entrance to Millfield County Jail at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The October wind blew yellow leaves across the asphalt, and low clouds promised rain. Officer Mike Rodriguez watched from his office window as another group of prisoners was led out of the bus. Among them was a woman who stood out, slender, with dark hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. Even in her prison uniform, she carried herself with dignity, which was rare for new arrivals. Lisa Wood, 28 years old, grand fraud. Rodriguez had looked through her file the day before. A typical story of an ambitious young woman who decided the world owed her something. Fake documents, fictitious loans, defrauded investors, $300,000 in damages. Sentence, 3 years in prison. Millfield County Jail was built in the 1970s and designed to hold 200 inmates, but now it held nearly 300. The overcrowding created constant tension that Rodriguez had to deal with every day. 35 years of service in law enforcement had taught him to read people at a glance, and this newcomer made him feel strangely uneasy. Lisa went through the standard intake procedure: a medical examination, photographing, and fingerprinting. She remained silent throughout the procedure, answering only direct questions. She was placed in cell number 23 in the second block, a solitary cell, which was rare in an overcrowded prison. "Special instructions from the prosecutor's office," explained Janet, the nurse on duty, seeing Rodriguez's surprised look. "They say she may be a witness in another case." Rodriguez frowned. In his 12 years at the prison, he had seen many special instructions, and they rarely led to anything good. At the same time, in the district attorney's office located 3 blocks from the prison, Tristan Harrison was reviewing the cases scheduled for trial. At 45, he was the youngest district attorney in the county's history, and he had not earned the position easily. 20 years of legal practice, an impeccable reputation, and a crime clearance rate above the state average had made him a local media hero and a source of pride for his constituents. Harrison was a tall man with graying temples that gave him an air of gravitas. His office was decorated with diplomas from the State University Law School, photos with the governor and senators, and family pictures with his wife Kaylee and 2 children. It was the perfect picture of a successful American lawyer. But behind that facade lay fatigue. 20 years of marriage to Kaylee had become a habit. The children had grown up and rarely called, and the work that had once inspired him now seemed like an endless series of identical cases. For the past few months, Tristan had felt like a hostage to his own success. His secretary Marilyn knocked on the door. "Mr. Harrison, Judge Thompson is here for you." Eleanor Thompson entered the office without ceremony. At 55, she was one of the most respected judges in the county and an old friend of the Harrison family. They had met in college, where Eleanor was a year ahead of Tristan. "You look tired," she said, settling into the chair opposite his desk. "The usual workload," Tristan replied, putting away his papers. "What brings you here?" "The Lisa Wood case. I heard you're planning to question her about the Morgan case." Tristan nodded. The case of Robert Morgan, a major real estate developer accused of money laundering, was one of the most high-profile cases of his career. Lisa Wood could be a key witness, as she had worked as an accountant at one of Morgan's firms. "Be careful with her," Eleanor warned. "I studied her case before sentencing. That woman is smart and dangerous. She knows how to use people." "I work with criminals every day, Eleanor. Not like her. She has a gift for finding people's weaknesses and exploiting them." Her former boss still claims she seduced him to gain access to financial documents. Tristan smiled. "You think I can't resist the charms of a criminal?" Eleanor looked at him intently. "I don't think you're in a state to assess the risks properly right now. How are things with Kaylee?" The mention of his wife made Tristan tense. "Everything's fine." "Tristan, we've known each other for 30 years. I can see you're having problems. Maybe you should take some time off." "I can't. Morgan's case is too important. If we lose it, my career is over." Eleanor sighed. Sometimes saving a marriage is more important than a career. After she left, Tristan stared out the window at the gray sky for a long time. Eleanor was right. His marriage was falling apart. Kaylee had become cold and suspicious. The children had grown distant, and he felt like a stranger in his own home. Work was the only thing that still made sense. That evening, at the Harrisons' house on Maple Street, Kaylee was preparing dinner and waiting for her husband. At 42, she was still an attractive woman, but the last few months had changed her. The suspicions she had tried to ignore grew stronger every day. Tristan's late nights, his distraction, his coldness in bed, it all pointed to what she was afraid to admit. As a school teacher, Kaylee was used to spotting lies. Children lied clumsily and their parents were only slightly better. But Tristan was a professional lawyer, and if he was cheating on her, he was doing it in a way that was impossible to prove. When Tristan finally came home at 8:30, dinner was already cold. "Late again?" Kaylee asked, without looking up from her plate. "The Morgan case. I'm interviewing a new witness tomorrow." "Male or female?" The question sounded so casual that Tristan didn't suspect anything. "Female, Lisa Wood. She worked at Morgan's firm." Kaylee memorized the name. In prison, Lisa lay on a narrow cot and made plans. The solitary confinement cell was an unexpected stroke of luck. It meant she had special status. Perhaps the prosecutor really needed her testimony, and that opened up possibilities. Lisa grew up in a family where money was always a problem. Her father worked in a factory, her mother cleaned offices, and she knew from childhood that beauty and intelligence were her only ways out of poverty. She got a scholarship to college, studied business and accounting. But honest work wasn't enough to afford the life she dreamed of. The fraud started small, fake income statements to get loans. But her appetite grew, the schemes became more complicated, and eventually she created a whole network of shell companies. 3 years in prison was the price she was willing to pay, but she had no intention of serving the entire sentence. The next morning, Rodriguez made his usual rounds of the blocks. He stopped at cell number 23. Lisa was sitting on her bunk reading a book from the prison library, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. The irony of the situation did not escape him. "How was your first night?" he asked. "Better than I expected," Lisa replied, looking up. "When will I be called to see the prosecutor?" "Soon. Be ready for 10 in the morning." Rodriguez noted that she did not look frightened or depressed, like most newcomers. On the contrary, there was a kind of anticipation in her eyes. The interrogation room in the prosecutor's office was sterile. White walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, and a video camera in the corner. Tristan Harrison laid out the documents in Morgan's case and checked the tape recorder. Outside, rain drizzled, turning the October day into a gray mess. At 10 o'clock, the door opened and an officer brought in Lisa Wood. Tristan looked up from his papers and froze for a moment. The photograph in the file did not convey her presence. The way she moved, held her head, looked straight into your eyes. Even in her prison uniform, she looked more like a businesswoman coming to a meeting than a criminal. "Miss Wood, please sit down," he said, pointing to the chair opposite him. "I'm Prosecutor Harrison. Thank you for agreeing to testify." Lisa sat down, keeping her eyes on him. "I don't think I had much choice." "Formally, no, but your cooperation could affect the terms of your sentence. So I do have a choice." Tristan turned on the tape recorder. "Let's start with your job at Greenwood Development. How long did you work there?" 8 months, from January to August last year. "As an accountant?" "Senior accountant. I did the accounting for 3 of Robert Morgan's major projects." The next hour was spent on the usual questions about financial transactions, suspicious transactions, and document flow. Lisa answered clearly and in detail, demonstrating perfect memory and understanding of the nuances. Tristan caught himself admiring her intelligence. "Are you saying that Morgan personally instructed you to falsify reports?" he asked. "Not falsify," he said, "creatively interpret." Morgan never said it outright. He's too smart for that. "But you understood that you were participating in illegal activity?" Lisa paused, studying his face. "Mr. Harrison, may I ask a question?" "I'm listening." "How long have you been a prosecutor?" "That's not relevant." "Just curious. You look tired. Is it hard being on the side of good all the time?" Tristan sensed a change in the atmosphere of the room. "Miss Wood, we're not here for philosophical discussions." "Of course." but sometimes it's helpful to talk to someone who understands what it's like to do something you don't like in order to survive. I do what I think is right. And how does that work for you? The question was asked so simply, but it hit a sore spot. Tristan put down his pen. I think that's enough for today. I need to study your testimony. Of course, but if you need to clarify any details, I'll contact the prison. When Lisa was led away, Tristan sat alone in the empty room for a long time. Her last look, understanding, almost sympathetic, stuck in his mind. That evening, Kaylee was waiting for him at home with a list of questions. How did the witness interview go? Productive, Tristan replied, loosening his tie. Can she really help with the case? Maybe. What does she look like? Tristan stopped halfway to the stairs. What? I asked what she looked like. It's a normal question. Usually. Nothing special. Kaylee saw him avoid her gaze. 20 years of marriage had taught her to read her husband, and now every line of his body spoke of lies. The next day, Rodriguez was making his afternoon rounds when he noticed something strange. Lisa Wood was standing at the window of her cell, watching the parking lot. Her posture was too tense for her to be simply admiring the view. Something interesting? He asked. Just looking. Is that allowed? Of course, but you're looking very intently. Lisa turned to him. Officer Rodriguez, right? I heard you're the boss here. One of the bosses. You must have seen a lot of interesting things over the years. Enough. Have you ever seen important people come to the prison for non-official business? Rodriguez frowned. What do you mean? Nothing specific, just thinking about how the system works. The conversation bothered Rodriguez for the rest of the day. In his experience, inmates didn't ask questions like that without a reason. Tristan returned to the prison 3 days later. Officially, it was to clarify his testimony. Unofficially, it was because he couldn't stop thinking about Lisa. This time, she looked even more confident. Her hair was neatly styled, and she had somehow managed to make her prison uniform look almost elegant. I hope you have time for a more detailed conversation, she said, when the officer closed the door behind him. I have a few questions about your testimony. Of course. But first, how is your wife? Tristan looked up. Excuse me? You look like you haven't been sleeping much. Problems at home? That's irrelevant. Perhaps. But you seem like a lonely man, Mr. Harrison, and I understand what that's like. Miss Wood, Lisa, and you can be honest. There are no audio recording devices here, only video. Our conversation is confidential. Tristan knew he should end this conversation, but he couldn't. Why do you think I'm lonely? The way you talk about your work, too much passion for someone who's happy at home, and the way you look at me, like you're seeing something you haven't seen in a long time. What do I see? Understanding. We both know what it's like to be trapped by your own decisions. An hour passed unnoticed. They talked about work, about life, about how easy it was to end up somewhere other than where you planned to be. Lisa was a wonderful listener. She asked the right questions, nodded understandingly, and didn't judge. When the meeting ended, Tristan realized he didn't want to leave. I might need another meeting, he said. I'll be waiting. The next meeting took place a week later, and another one 3 days after that. Officially, they discussed Morgan's case, but more and more time was spent on personal conversations. Lisa was a master at creating intimacy. She shared childhood memories, talked about her dreams, and encouraged Tristan to talk about himself. Gradually, the official meetings turned into something more. Have you ever thought about being happy with someone else? She asked during their 4th meeting. Everyone thinks that sometimes, but you think about it often. It was a statement, not a question. Why do you ask? Because I think about it too. About what it would be like to meet you in another life, under different circumstances. Tristan felt something flip in his chest. Lisa, I know it's crazy, but isn't it nice to imagine sometimes? Meanwhile, Kaylee was conducting her own investigation. She knew her husband's schedule better than he did, and had noticed that his official meetings at the prosecutor's office were getting longer and he was coming home later. She called the prosecutor's office under the pretext of planning a family dinner. Marilyn, this is Kaylee Harrison. Will Tristan be free early today? I'm afraid not, Mrs. Harrison. He has a meeting with an inmate until 5. That would, again? Yes, on the Morgan case. It's the 4th meeting this week. Kaylee hung up with trembling hands. 4 meetings in 1 week with 1 inmate? That wasn't normal. Rodriguez had also noticed the frequency of the prosecutor's visits. What's more, he had noticed a change in Lisa's behavior. She had become more animated, almost glowing. Such changes usually meant only one thing: a romantic relationship. That evening, he stayed late at the office and looked through the visitor log. Tristan Harrison had met with Lisa Wood 7 times in the last 3 weeks. The average length of the meetings was 2 hours. That was too much for a witness. Rodriguez decided to start informal surveillance. Tristan and Lisa's 5th meeting took place at the end of November. The first snow was falling outside, and the heating was on in the interrogation room. "I dream of traveling," Lisa said, looking at the snow. "Paris, Rome, Tokyo, all the things I could never afford." "You'll have a chance after you're released." "Will I? It's almost impossible to find a good job with a criminal record. There are rehabilitation programs." "Tristan." She said his name so intimately that he felt a chill. "We both know the system doesn't work for people like me." "What do you mean?" "I'm a smart woman who made a bad choice. But I'm not a bad person, and I think you understand that." Tristan looked at her and saw not a criminal, but a beautiful, intelligent woman who understood him better than his wife of 20 years. "What do you feel when you look at me?" she asked quietly. "I'm not supposed to feel anything. But you do." "Yes." That admission changed everything. Lisa stood up and walked over to him. Tristan knew he should stop her, but he couldn't move. "We can pretend this is just work," she said, standing next to his chair. "Or we can be honest with each other." When she touched his hand, Tristan realized he had crossed a line he never intended to cross. December brought an early winter to Millfield. Snow lay thick on the ground, turning the small town into a postcard. But the cold penetrated everywhere, into homes, into hearts, into relationships that seemed strong. Tristan Harrison sat in his office and stared at the calendar. It had been 2 months since he first crossed the line with Lisa Wood. 2 months of secret meetings, stolen moments of intimacy, and a constant feeling of guilt that he tried to drown out. Their romance developed rapidly. What began as mutual attraction quickly turned into a passion that frightened Tristan with its intensity. Lisa was everything his marriage to Kaylee lacked: unpredictable, passionate, understanding. She listened to him as if every word was important, looked at him as if he were the most interesting person in the world. Officially, their meetings still took place in the interrogation room, but the content had changed dramatically. The camera recorded their silhouettes, but it couldn't convey the intimacy of their conversations, the touch of their hands on the table, the glances that spoke louder than words. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Marilyn peeked into the office. "Mr. Harrison, your wife is on the line." Tristan reluctantly picked up the phone. "Hi, Kaylee." "Tristan, we need to talk. Tonight." There was that special note in her voice that always heralded a serious conversation. "About what?" "About us. About what's happening in our marriage." "I'll be home by 7. "No, you'll be home by 6, and we'll talk before dinner." Kaylee hung up without waiting for a response. Over the past few weeks, she had gathered enough information to know that her husband was cheating on her. All that remained was to find out how far the relationship had gone and what she was going to do about it. In prison, Lisa was preparing for her next meeting with Tristan. In 2 months, she had learned to read his mood at a glance, knowing when he needed comfort and when he needed passion. Today, something special was planned. She sat down at a small table in her cell and took out a piece of paper. On it was a list of names, dates, and amounts. It was information about corrupt connections in the city administration that she had gathered while working for Morgan. This information was worth more than all the money she had ever stolen. Officer Rodriguez escorted her to the interrogation room at the usual time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. After a month of observation, he noticed a pattern. After her meetings with the prosecutor, Lisa returned to her cell in high spirits, while Harrison left the building looking like a man who had received either very good news or very bad news. "How are you, Miss Wood?" he asked, leading her down the hallway. "Fine, Officer Rodriguez. How are you?" "The usual. By the way, we're getting an inspection from the state tomorrow. They're checking on the conditions of the inmates." Lisa stopped. "Inspection?" "Yes. Nothing serious, just a routine check. But if anyone has any complaints or special circumstances, it's best to let us know in advance." Their eyes met, and Lisa realized he knew. Maybe not all the details, but enough to be cautious. "Thanks for the warning." When Tristan entered the interrogation room, Lisa immediately noticed his tension. "Bad day?" she asked softly. "My wife wants to talk tonight." "About us?" "Probably." Lisa stood up and walked over to him. In the corner, a camera silently recorded their silhouettes, but they had long since stopped paying attention to it. "Tristan, we need to discuss something important." "What exactly?" She took out a folded piece of paper. "Remember I told you I had information about Morgan's other crimes?" "Of course." "It's not just him. There are names of city officials, judges, even federal agents. It's a corruption network worth millions of dollars." Tristan took the piece of paper, scanned the names, and turned pale. Some of these people were his friends, university colleagues, political allies. "Where did you get this?" "I told you I wasn't just an accountant. Morgan trusted me more than he should have." This could ruin the careers of dozens of people, or make one career. Imagine the fame a prosecutor would get for exposing a network like this. Tristan looked at her. "And what will you get?" "Freedom, witness protection, a new life." "And that's all?" Lisa paused, then sat down across from him. "No, that's not all. I'll get you." "Lisa, listen to me. You're unhappy in your marriage. Your wife doesn't understand you. Your children are grown up and living their own lives. But I understand you. I see the person you can be. You're talking about divorce. I'm talking about happiness. Don't you deserve it?" Tristan looked at the list in his hands. The information was indeed explosive. If he used it correctly, he would become the most famous prosecutor in the state. But the price? I need time to think. Of course, but not too much. The state inspection is coming tomorrow. I don't know how long I can keep this information secret. It was a lie. There was no urgency. But Lisa knew that time pressure made people make quick decisions. That evening, Tristan came home at 6 o'clock sharp, as promised. Kaylee was waiting for him in the living room, sitting in an armchair like a judge ready to pass sentence. "Sit down," she said, pointing to the sofa opposite her. Tristan sat down, holding his briefcase on his lap like a shield. 20 years, Kaylee began. 20 years we've been married, and I thought I knew you." "Kaylee, shut up, let me speak." She stood up and began pacing the room. "You've changed in the last few months. You've become secretive, cold, distant. At first I thought it was work, stress, fatigue." Tristan remained silent, feeling his heart beat faster. "But then I started noticing things. You were late. You started showering right after work. You avoided my gaze, and especially how often you've been seeing that prisoner. It's work. 7 meetings in 3 weeks isn't work, Tristan. It's an affair." The word hung in the air between them. Tristan realized there was no point in denying it. "Kaylee, I can explain." "Explain what? That you're sleeping with a criminal? That you're risking everything? Your career, your family, your reputation, for a woman who's in prison? It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me. Explain what could be so special about this woman that makes you betray everything we've built together." Tristan was silent. How could he explain that Lisa saw in him the man he wanted to be? That she listened to him, understood him, made him feel alive? "Do you love her?" Kaylee asked quietly. That question was the most painful. Tristan didn't know the answer, or didn't want to know it. "I don't know. You don't know." Kaylee laughed bitterly. 20 years of marriage, and you don't know if you love another woman. "Kaylee, please. No." She turned her back to him. "I'm not going to fight you for a prisoner. I have my pride." "What are you saying?" I'm saying that tomorrow morning I'm going to my sister's in Chicago. I need time to think about our relationship. How long? I don't know. Maybe forever. After she left, Tristan sat in the empty house and thought about Lisa's proposal. Divorce, a new life, a career boost. Why did it scare him more than it should have appealed to him? The next day, the state inspectors did indeed arrive. Rodriguez spent the whole day with them, answering questions about the prison regime, medical care, security. Fortunately, no one was interested in how often the prosecutor visited. In the evening, after the inspectors left, he went to see Lisa. "How was your day?" he asked. "Quiet. I heard the inspectors were satisfied." "Yes, they didn't find any violations." "That's good. Stability is important." Rodriguez studied her face. "Miss Wood, may I ask you a personal question?" "Of course. You're playing a dangerous game, and I'm not sure you understand how it could end." Lisa got up from her bunk. "Officer Rodriguez, I appreciate your concern, but I am a grown woman and responsible for my own decisions. Even if those decisions could harm other people?" "What decisions? I'm testifying in a corruption case. Isn't that what the law requires?" "We both know it's not just about the testimony." Lisa moved closer to him. "Officer, if you have specific charges, bring them. If not, let me serve my sentence in peace." Rodriguez realized she wasn't going to back down, but he also realized that the situation was getting out of control. Meanwhile, Tristan sat in the empty house, rereading the list Lisa had given him. Each name meant a ruined career, scandal, possibly suicide, but it also meant justice that had been denied for so long. His phone rang. It was Lisa. Somehow, she had managed to get through from the jail. "Have you made your decision?" she asked without preamble. "Lisa, this is too serious. If I start this case, you'll be a hero, a prosecutor who cleaned up the system. What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong. I have documents, recordings, witnesses. It's a slam dunk. What about us? We'll be together, in the new life we deserve." After the call, Tristan stared out the window at the snow-covered yard for a long time. Tomorrow, he had to make a decision that would change everything. But he still didn't know if he was willing to pay the price. In prison, Lisa went to bed with a smile on her face. The plan was working perfectly. Tristan was almost ready for the next step. All that was left was to give him a little push. She didn't know that Rodriguez had decided to launch an official investigation into their relationship. Nor did she know that tomorrow morning he would file a report with his superiors about the district attorney's suspicious activities. The game was getting more dangerous, and none of the players had any idea how it would end. It was a frosty, clear January morning. The sun reflected off the snow, turning Millfield into a sparkling winter wonderland. But the beauty of the day contrasted with the grim events that were about to unfold. Tristan Harrison hadn't slept all night. He sat in his office with a bottle of whiskey, which he had opened for the first time in many years, thinking about how his life had turned into a nightmare. Kaylee had left 3 days ago, leaving a note saying she was filing for divorce. His parents had been calling with questions about family problems, and yesterday, information came to light that changed everything. Judge Thompson warned him that she had received an anonymous call about unethical relations between the district attorney and a prisoner. An investigation could begin at any moment. His career, his reputation, his freedom, everything was hanging by a thread. And Lisa was becoming more and more insistent. Yesterday's conversation turned into an ultimatum. Either he used her information to bring a case against the corrupt officials and secure her release, or she would turn everything over to federal agents herself, revealing their affair in the process. "You have 24 hours, she said at the end of the conversation. "I'll be waiting for your answer tomorrow." Tristan realized he was trapped. Lisa had never planned just a romance. She had been hunting him from the beginning, gathering information, preparing the ground for blackmail. He was not her lover, but her victim. At 8 in the morning, Tristan took a shower, shaved, and put on his best suit. If this was to be his last day as a prosecutor, he would meet it with dignity. At the prosecutor's office, he found a report from Officer Rodriguez on his desk. The brief, dry document called for an internal investigation into the excessive contact between the district attorney and inmate Lisa Wood. Attached to the report was a list of all their meetings over the past 3 months. Tristan folded the document and put it in the safe. There was no time left. In prison, Lisa was preparing for a decisive meeting. She knew she had pushed Tristan to the limit, and today he had to make a choice. Either way, she would win. Either she would gain her freedom and an influential ally, or she would destroy his career out of revenge. During her 3 months in prison, she had learned a lot. She had studied the prison routine, the guards' habits, and the location of the surveillance cameras. Information was power, and power was everything. Officer Rodriguez made his morning rounds with a heavy heart. The report had been filed, but he knew that the internal investigation could drag on for weeks. Meanwhile, the situation continued to develop. Yesterday, he noticed that Lisa Wood had been allowed to make a phone call at an unauthorized time. Someone in the administration was helping her. He stopped at cell number 23. "Good morning, Miss Wood." "Good morning, Officer Rodriguez. Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Yes. By the way, do you have a meeting with the prosecutor today?" "Of course. At the usual time." Rodriguez noticed that she looked particularly confident. Too confident for an inmate who should be worried about her future. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Tristan arrived at the prison. He was carrying a briefcase with Morgan's case files, but he knew he wouldn't need them today. In his jacket pocket was a small bottle of pills, sleeping pills from Kaylee's medicine cabinet, strong enough to knock out a horse. "Welcome, Mr. Harrison," greeted the officer on duty. "The usual room is available." "Thank you." The interrogation room greeted him with its usual coolness. Tristan laid out his documents on the table and checked the camera in the corner. A red light flashed, recording everything that happened. A few minutes later, Lisa was brought in. She entered with a regal bearing, as if it were her office and not a prison cell. "Tristan," she said softly, sitting down opposite him. "You look tired." "I haven't slept." "A difficult decision?" "The hardest in my life." Lisa leaned forward. "And what decision did you make?" Tristan took a folder of documents out of his briefcase. "I've looked over your information. It's very impressive. I told you I had everything you needed." "Yes, but there's one problem." "What is it?" "I checked some of the facts. Half of this information is unreliable. The dates don't match, the documents are forged, the witnesses are dead or have disappeared." Lisa sat up straight. "You're wrong." "No, Lisa. You were wrong to think I would believe these lies. They're not lies. I have proof." "You have fantasies of power and revenge, but I'm not going to be part of your games anymore." Lisa stood up, her face contorted with rage. "You think you can just walk away? Forget everything? That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll tell everyone about our affair. Your career will be over." "Maybe, but I'd rather that than your blackmail." Lisa walked around the table and stood next to him. "Tristan, don't be a fool. We can have everything we ever dreamed of." "We didn't dream of anything. You used me." "I loved you. You loved what I could give you." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Fine, forget about the big deal. But you can get my sentence reviewed. I'll be out in 6 months and we'll—" "No." Tristan broke free from her grip. "It's over, Lisa." "No, it's not over." She grabbed the phone from the table. "I'm calling the newspaper right now. I'll tell everyone about the corrupt prosecutor." Tristan knew she was bluffing. There was no phone in the interrogation room, but her hysterics could attract the attention of the guards. "Lisa, calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down. You ruined my life. You ruined your own life when you started stealing. And you ruined my hope." She lunged at him, trying to hit him. Tristan grabbed her wrists, and they wrestled for a few seconds. Then Lisa broke free and backed away to the wall. "Fine," she said, breathing heavily. "If I can't have my freedom, then you won't have any peace. Tomorrow morning, I'll file a report for sexual assault. I'll say you threatened to make my conditions worse if I didn't agree to sleep with you. No one will believe you." "They will. I have details of our meetings that only I know. The mole on your back, the scar on your wrist, what you say in your sleep." Tristan realized she was right. Even if the accusation couldn't be proven in court, the mere suspicion would be enough to ruin his reputation forever. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I already told you. A review of the sentence, freedom in 6 months, and a continuation of our relationship. And if I refuse, then we'll both go down, but you'll lose more." Tristan looked at her and realized that the conversation had reached an impasse. Lisa would never back down. She would blackmail him until one of them died. "You know what?" he said, taking a bottle of water out of his briefcase. "Let's drink to our cooperation." Lisa looked at the bottle suspiciously. "You have water in your briefcase?" "I was sure our conversation would be long." He opened the bottle and took a big gulp. "See? It's clean." Lisa took the bottle and drank some too. The water was cold and refreshing. "Now let's talk about the details of your release," Tristan said, sitting back down at the table. For the next half hour, they discussed the legal aspects of the sentence review. Lisa gradually relaxed, satisfied that she had achieved what she wanted. She didn't notice that she had started yawning. "I'm tired," she said, rubbing her eyes. "It's been a long day. Why don't you get some rest?" "Yes, I think I will." Lisa rested her head on her hands. Her eyelids grew heavy, her thoughts sluggish. Within a few minutes, she was asleep. Tristan stood up and approached her. Her pulse was weak but steady. The sleeping pill had worked faster than he expected. Now came the most terrifying part of the plan. He took a handkerchief out of his pocket and carefully wiped the bottle, removing Lisa's fingerprints. Then he gently lifted her head and poured the rest of the water into her mouth, pretending she was drinking it voluntarily. The next step was to fake a suicide. Tristan knew that suicides happened in prison, especially among inmates who had lost hope of ever being released. Lisa had to look like a woman who couldn't take the pressure and made a drastic decision. He carefully moved her unconscious body to the floor and positioned it to look like an overdose of sleeping pills. He placed the empty bottle next to her hand. The final touch was a letter tucked into the pocket of her robe, a confession of love for the prosecutor and regret that their relationship was impossible. Tristan had written it the day before, imitating Lisa's handwriting from samples in her file. When everything was ready, he gathered his documents, checked that he had left no traces, and left the room. "Miss Wood has fallen asleep at her desk," he told the officer on duty. "She must be tired from the long conversation. Let her rest." "Of course, Mr. Harrison, goodbye." Tristan left the prison at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun was still shining brightly outside, but he felt as if he had been plunged into darkness. Lisa's body was discovered 2 hours later when it was time to return the prisoners to their cells. Officer Johnson went into the interrogation room and found her lying unconscious on the floor. "Medic to the interrogation room! Urgent!" he shouted into the radio. The nurse who arrived tried to resuscitate Lisa, but it was too late. There was no pulse. Officer Rodriguez arrived at the scene 10 minutes later. One glance was enough to see that the woman was dead. Next to the body lay an empty water bottle and a note. "What do we have?" he asked Johnson. "Looks like suicide. Overdose of sleeping pills. Here's the note." Rodriguez read the letter. It was written in neat female handwriting and contained a declaration of love for an unattainable man and a decision to end her life because she couldn't be with him. "Who was the last person to see her alive?" Rodriguez asked. "Prosecutor Harrison. They met between 2 and 4. "And when was she found?" "At 6:10. Rodriguez frowned. Something didn't add up. "Show me the camera footage." They went into the surveillance room. The screen showed Lisa and Tristan's last meeting. Most of the time they just talked. Then Lisa laid her head on the table and fell asleep. Harrison gathered his papers and left, leaving her asleep. "Strange," Rodriguez muttered. "What's strange?" "Look at the time. She fell asleep at 3:40. Harrison left at 4. But more than 2 hours passed between when she fell asleep and when she died. Why didn't she wake up? Maybe she was very tired? Or very pumped up on sleeping pills?" Rodriguez returned to the interrogation room and carefully examined the scene. Something bothered him, but he couldn't figure out what it was. "Johnson, call the coroner. And don't touch anything until he gets here." "You don't think it's suicide?" I think we need to be very careful with our conclusions." The coroner arrived an hour later. Dr. Hamilton was an experienced medical examiner who had been working in the county for 20 years. He examined the body, studied the note, and listened to the officer's statements. "Preliminary conclusion, barbiturate overdose," he said. "The exact cause of death will be determined after the autopsy." "What about the note?" Rodriguez asked. "It looks genuine. The handwriting is steady. No signs of coercion." "Doctor, is it possible that someone forced her to take the sleeping pills?" Hamilton shrugged. "Technically, yes, but why? And who would do that? The last person she spoke to was the district attorney, and he's not a murderer." Rodriguez was silent. He remembered the report he had filed that morning. He remembered the strange relationship between Harrison and Lisa. And he remembered how tense the prosecutor had looked in recent weeks. That evening, Tristan was sitting in his office pretending to work when Rodriguez called. "Mr. Harrison, I'm very sorry to tell you some sad news. Lisa Wood has been found dead in her cell." Tristan feigned shock. "What? How did this happen?" "It looks like suicide. An overdose of sleeping pills." "My God! When did this happen?" "This evening." "You were the last person to speak to her." "Yes, we met during the day. She seemed upset, but I didn't think—" "Mr. Harrison, we'll need your statement on record tomorrow." "Of course, I'll do whatever you need." After the call, Tristan covered his face with his hands. It was done. Lisa would never blackmail anyone again. But the price. In prison, Rodriguez examined the interrogation room once more. Something was still bothering him. He turned on the camera recording and reviewed it several times. Then he noticed a detail he had missed before. When Harrison was gathering documents, he took something out of his briefcase and put it back. The movement was quick but noticeable. "What was that?" Rodriguez muttered. He enlarged the image and reviewed the episode in slow motion. Harrison was definitely hiding something in his briefcase. Something small. Rodriguez looked at the empty bottle next to Lisa's body, then back at the screen, and he realized he had seen that bottle in Harrison's hands at the beginning of the meeting. The prosecutor had brought the sleeping pills with him. Monday morning in Millfield began with phone calls. News of the prisoner's death spread quickly throughout the town, accompanied by rumors and speculation. By 10 o'clock, local newspaper reporters were already outside the prosecutor's office. Tristan Harrison arrived at work earlier than usual. He hadn't slept all night, replaying the previous day's events in his mind and preparing for the inevitable questions. In the bathroom mirror, he saw a man who looked 10 years older, with red eyes and trembling hands. The first thing he did was call Judge Thompson. "Eleanor, have you heard about Lisa Wood?" "Yes. What a terrible tragedy. How are you feeling?" "It was a shock. I just spoke to her yesterday." "Tristan, I understand that this is difficult, but you need to be prepared for questions, given the frequency of your meetings." "What do you mean?" "People will ask why the district attorney was meeting with a single inmate so often. You need a convincing story." After the conversation, Tristan realized that even his old friends were beginning to suspect something was wrong. At the prison, Officer Rodriguez began an unofficial investigation. He spent the entire night studying the surveillance footage from the last 3 months. The picture that emerged was increasingly disturbing. Harrison and Lisa's meetings were indeed too frequent and too long for ordinary interrogations. Moreover, their body language was gradually changing from formal communication to obvious intimacy. The latest recordings showed them holding hands across the table. Rodriguez compiled a timeline of events and realized that the affair had begun almost immediately after Lisa's arrival at the prison. But what was the motive for the murder? At 10 in the morning, detectives from the county police department arrived at the prison. Officially, they were conducting a routine check in connection with the death of an inmate. The team was led by Detective Michael Brower, an experienced investigator who worked in a neighboring county and did not know Harrison personally. "Officer Rodriguez," Brower addressed him, "I'm told you were the first to arrive at the scene." "Not exactly. Officer Johnson found the body, but I was in charge of the initial examination." "Tell me what you found strange." Rodriguez hesitated. Sharing his suspicions about the prosecutor was dangerous for his career, but the woman was dead, and the truth was more important. Detective, can I speak frankly? Of course. I believe that the relationship between District Attorney Harrison and Lisa Wood went beyond the professional. I have proof. Brower raised an eyebrow. What proof? Rodriguez showed him the surveillance footage, the visitor log, and the report he had filed the day before. The detective studied the materials carefully. These are serious allegations. I understand, but look at this recording. They reviewed Harrison and Lisa's last meeting. Brower immediately noticed something suspicious about the bottle. Did he bring something with him? Exactly. The bottle came out of his briefcase. Where did the sleeping pills come from? We don't know yet. The toxicology report will be ready the day after tomorrow. Brewer thought for a moment. I need to talk to the coroner. Dr. Hamilton met the detective in his office. The autopsy had been completed that morning, and the results were intriguing. The cause of death was respiratory arrest due to a phenobarbital overdose, he reported. The concentration in the blood was 3 times the lethal dose. Suicide. Technically possible, but there are some nuances, such as... First, phenobarbital has a very bitter taste. It's extremely difficult to voluntarily drink that amount. Second, there are no traces of vomit on the tongue or in the esophagus, which is strange with such a dosage. So either she was unconscious when she took the drug, or it was disguised in something else. In water? Possibly. But then she would have had to be forced or tricked into drinking it. Brower asked for the bottle to be checked for fingerprints. The result was strange. Only Lisa's fingerprints remained on the bottle, but they were smudged, as if someone had deliberately smeared them. Meanwhile, Tristan was giving his statement to the prosecutor. He chose a tactic of complete openness, hoping that honesty would help him avoid suspicion. Yes, I met with Miss Wood frequently, he told Detective Brower. She was a key witness in the case against Robert Morgan. 7 meetings in 3 weeks? Isn't that a bit frequent? It's a very complicated case. Miss Wood had extensive information about financial fraud. How did she appear during your last meeting? Depressed. She said she was tired of prison and had lost hope of early release. Did she threaten suicide? Not directly, but she said her life had lost all meaning. Mr. Harrison, did you bring water with you to the last meeting? Tristan hesitated for a moment. Yes, I had a bottle of water in my briefcase. Why? Our meetings were long. I always take water with me. Did you offer Miss Wood any water? Yes, she drank some. And then what happened? She gradually became sleepy. I thought she was tired, so I decided to end the meeting. Didn't you find it strange that she fell asleep right at the table? To be honest, yes, but she said she didn't sleep well in her cell. Brower took notes without revealing his thoughts. So far, Harrison's version seemed plausible, but the details didn't add up. After the interview, the detective met with Rodriguez. What do you think of the prosecutor's testimony? He's too well prepared. Every answer sounds rehearsed. What about the motive? Rodriguez took out a folder of documents. Yesterday morning, I filed a report about a suspicious relationship between them. Today, the woman is dead. Coincidence? You think he killed her to cover up the affair? I think she was blackmailing him, and he decided to take drastic measures. Brewer studied the report. I need more evidence. On Wednesday, the toxicology results came back. They confirmed the presence of phenobarbital in Lisa's system, but also revealed traces of another substance, diazepam. The combination of the 2 drugs was lethal. Where could she have gotten these drugs? Brewer asked the prison nurse. No way. We keep strict records of all medications. We don't use diazepam at all. What about phenobarbital? Only with a prescription from a neurologist. The last time it was prescribed was 6 months ago. Brewer realized that the drugs had been brought in from outside. Someone had deliberately prepared a lethal dose. The breakthrough came on Thursday. The detective decided to check the Harrisons' medical records. Both drugs were found in the prosecutor's wife's medicine cabinet. Diazepam for anxiety and phenobarbital for migraines. Mr. Harrison, Brewer called him, I need to ask you a few more questions. Of course. Does your wife have any prescription medications? Tristan felt the ground slip away beneath his feet. Yes, For migraines and anxiety. Diazepam and phenobarbital? Possibly. I don't keep track of her medications. Mr. Harrison, these drugs were found in Lisa Wood's system. The silence lasted too long. Mr. Harrison? I don't understand how this is possible. I think you understand very well. On Friday morning, Tristan sat in his office and realized that it was all over. The evidence was piling up into a chain that couldn't be broken. Sooner or later, he would be arrested. At noon, Eleanor Thompson arrived. She looked older and tired. "Tristan," Detective Brower called. "What did he say?" "That you're going to be arrested tomorrow morning on suspicion of murder." Tristan closed his eyes. "Eleanor, don't say anything. I don't want to know the truth, but if you really did it..." "She blackmailed me. She threatened to ruin everything." "My God, Tristan, how could you?" "I didn't plan it. It just happened." Eleanor stood up. "I can't help you anymore. Find a good lawyer." On Saturday morning, Detective Brower and 2 officers arrived at the Harrisons' house. Tristan was waiting for them, dressed and ready. "Tristan Harrison, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Lisa Wood." The handcuffs clicked shut with a metallic sound that seemed to Tristan to be the loudest sound he had ever heard in his life. In jail, Officer Rodriguez watched the news on TV. The anchor reported on the arrest of the district attorney. The camera showed Harrison being led in handcuffs to a police car. "Justice has been served," said the officer standing next to him. Rodriguez didn't answer. He thought about Lisa Wood, a smart, ambitious woman who had played a dangerous game and lost. Her death was the price of greed and cruelty, but Harrison would pay his price too. Tristan Harrison's trial began 6 months later. The case received widespread coverage in the regional press. The prosecutor who killed his prisoner lover to cover up corruption became a symbol of the moral decay of the authorities. The defense tried to prove suicide, but the evidence was too clear. Officer Rodriguez's testimony, surveillance camera footage, and forensic evidence all pointed to premeditated murder. Tristan was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is serving his sentence in a federal prison, where he leads a quiet life as a librarian. Kaylee Harrison returned to Millfield only for the trial. After the verdict, she sold her house and moved to another state, taking her maiden name. The children changed their last names and no longer have contact with their father. Lisa Wood is buried in the town cemetery. Only her name and dates of birth and death are engraved on her gravestone. No one visits her grave, but the story of her life and death serves as a warning about the consequences of greed, ambition, and moral blindness.